tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. Fun, insightful interviews from a washed-up producer with nothing to lose. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. Here comes McKnight tonight.
Welcome to McKnight Tonight. Here's Rob McKnight.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to McKnight Tonight. I am Rob McKnight, and it's Thursday, January 22. And you know, Amanda, you know what Thursday means. It's Tipsy Thursday.
Cheers.
What drink have you got tonight?
Nothing. You didn't get me one.
I'll be right back. Jasmine, can you get your mum a drink? I've got the wine right here.
I'll have a wine.
Okay.
We'll do that
I've
next.
got the wine right here. We'll get it to you.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Wow, I'm in a bit of trouble there. Hey, look, have a drink, everyone. Rob's put his foot in his mouth like 1 minute into the show. Now, a bit of a programming note before we start. We won't actually be doing a show on Monday night due to the Australia Day public holiday. Yes, I'm going to celebrate Australia Day, but I will be here at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time for a Zoom chat with all of our paid members. So, I haven't told you about this, Amanda. Breaking the news live on air. I thought that would be the best time to do it, as everyone's used to switching on for the show. So, if you're keen for a chat, go to the YouTube page. Make sure you're a paid up member of youtube.com/@McKnight and I will be sending out the details, the Zoom details, Monday morning on how to log on. That will be a bit of fun, I reckon. The last time we've done one of these chats before, it was a lot of fun. I probably told a few too many stories, and if it's later at night, if it's Australia Day, I might have had a few. I'll come in and maybe tell way too many stories, Amanda. I tell you what, on a serious note, it's been a big day today with our National Day of Mourning. Australians have come together to honour the victims of the Bondi tragedy. Across the country, flags have been flown at half-mast, memorial services have been held, and communities have paused to reflect, remember and support grieving families. This evening at 7:01 p.m, the nation stopped for a minute's silence. TV networks and radio stations even marked the moment, and buildings around the country lit up to remember the victims. Yeah, it was a terrible tragedy, and I think the country's still coming to terms with it. But let me tell you what's coming up in this edition of McKnight Tonight, because despite it being a day of mourning, the coalition is in meltdown and they have been making headlines. Nationals leader David Littleproud has walked away from the Liberals. There's been explosive texts, leaked letters and background briefings. I'll take you through it all. Plus, is Tony Armstrong's new ABC comedy special dividing Australia and being racist against white people? Later, Trump at the World Economic Forum. I'll bring you the latest on Greenland, NATO, and US expert Bruce Wolpe will give his one-year report card on Trump's second term. All that and plenty more in this Tipsy Thursday edition of McKnight Tonight. I hope you're having a good drop. All right, let's get into our hot topics. Because even on a National Day of Mourning, it seems our politicians couldn't help but make themselves the story. Today, the coalition is in tatters after the National Party walked out on the Liberal Party. Now, I talked about this last night. Remember, details were leaking while McKnight Tonight was live on air. And today, we have more details. And it honestly looks like there's no coming back for the coalition while Susan Lee remains the leader of the Liberal Party. To understand the latest developments, we need to go back to yesterday, when Nationals, Bridget McKenzie, Ross Cadle and Susan McDonald, they all resigned from their front bench roles after defying coalition solidarity rules and voting against Labor's combating anti-Semitism, hate and extremist bill. Now that led to the Nationals leader, David Littleproud, sending a letter to Susan Lee, as he explained in a press conference this morning.
I sent a letter advising Susan Lee that if she accepted those resignations, because it would not be appropriate to, considering the circumstances we had, then our entire ministry will resign. We're not offering a resignation for her to accept or not. We are tendering our resignation. And Subsequent to that, unfortunately, Susan Lee has ignored that, and she will not, and from subsequent conversations, will not reinstate those 3 senators to the shadow cabinet positions. Therefore, the entire ministry resigned, but she has also forced the coalition into an untenable position that can no longer continue.
Now, what he meant by that about not for her to accept was that Susan Lee had asked them to reconsider, take some time, and not do all this on the National Day of Mourning. But David Littleproud came out at, I think it was 8:30 this morning, and did that press conference, and he said he wanted to do it early to leave time for the National Day of Mourning. Of course, though, what has dominated headlines? This. There are now claims and counterclaims between the Libs and Nats about what really happened. The Libs are saying the Nats agreed to the legislation, but the National Party say they never saw the final legislation when negotiating with the Libs. So while there was some agreement, ultimately they hadn't seen the final legislation to make a final decision. It's a real he said, she said moment. And it has led to a complete breakdown with the Nationals making the following declaration.
We cannot be part, our party room has made it very clear, we cannot be part of a shadow ministry under Susan Lee.
Now that's quite extraordinary, because the Liberal Party will say it's not up to the Nationals to determine who our leader is, and as it is not up to the Liberal Party to determine who the national leader is, and that is absolutely true. 100. Although I do seem to remember that Barnaby Joyce said Malcolm Turnbull tried to get him axed as leader of the National Party. But the Nationals do have the right to say we're not going to work with this person. Today, Susan Lee refused to front the media in order to pay respects to the National Day of Mourning for the victims of Bondi. She hasn't done any media. But that hasn't stopped background briefings to journalists all day. In fact, Kieran Gilbert on Sky News, he read out some of the messages he has received to Bridget McKenzie, who has been one of the Nats in the middle of this mess.
So in relation to the character assessments of David Littleproud, I want to go through a few of them and get your thoughts. These are from senior Liberal shadow cabinet ministers. One says he's a pathological liar. Everything Barnaby Joyce said is true. David Littleproud is paralysed by fear. Matt Canavan is running the show. I would trust Pauline Hanson before I trusted David Littleproud. We can never go back into coalition with the Nats. With Littleproud as leader, he's done this twice. He will do it again. He's impossible to deal with. He misled his own party room while lying to us. What do you say to those character assessments and critiques of David Littleproud?
Well, I think it says a lot that former shadow cabinet colleagues that we fought elections on, that we've developed policy on, and we've traversed very difficult conversations and policy positions and fights on behalf of our country over many, many years, chooses to depict a former shadow cabinet colleague and leader of the National Party in such a way. I can categorically say that Matthew Canavan is not running the National Party. The National Party party room this week made a very difficult decision to not support the hate law bills. We drafted amendments. We were unable to get to an agreement with the Liberal Party on what that looked like after all sides acting in good faith and doing their very best. So we moved
the way it was put to me was that
in the Senate that the Liberal Party could have supported, and they didn't. Amendments that would insert provisions that we could list hate groups that we want to list. We all want to list those hate groups who glorified or celebrated terrorism. They chose to vote against that. If the Liberal Party had have voted with us, that would now be in the legislation. So I understand the Liberal Party is upset. I understand my former shadow cabinet colleagues
an understatement.
Are briefing out today with such negative...
Scathing.
Right?
They're ropeable.
And as your mother would have said...
They misled. They're saying that David Littleproud is a pathological liar and misled them, that he indicated to them that the concerns that you raised, the National Party, were alleviated, he'd take it to the party and it would be dealt with. That did not happen. And in fact, you said in your resignation letter or offer to resign that the decision was made on 18 January to support the bill in its amended form. You said it black and white.
I can tell you that what we considered on that Sunday night as a shadow cabinet was not the bill that was actually voted on Tuesday night.
Very good interview. I like Bridget McKenzie. She's been on this show. I like her honest style. She looks very emotional there. And even David Littleproud during his press conference looked emotional. This is obviously a very big issue. There's a big question in there. If you want to know about the leaking that goes on, ask yourself this question. How did Kieran Gilbert from Sky News get Mackenzie's resignation letter? A letter that is meant to be confidential. So this is all now about owning the narrative, right? So all the leaking, all the texts that you heard in that interview, this is all about trying to own the narrative. And even Bridget McKenzie later on in that interview did raise the idea and the question of how Kieran has a copy of her resignation letter, which is confidential, has not been released publicly. But he had it. Where did he get it from? Well, the Liberal Party, of course, because they are now trying to bring down the National Party because they don't like how it's gone. And in fact, Sky News has revealed another text message sent to them by a senior Liberal source that says David Littleproud has just united the Liberal Party room behind Susan Lee in a way that was impossible 24 hours ago. This ends with David being rolled, not Susan. Thank you, David. But look, that spin seems at odds with reporting in The Australian today, which says 5 different Liberal MPs have told the outlet Susan is done. And if you want my take and my McNostradamus, Susan Lee is done. David Littleproud is literally doing what the party room told him to do. I'm not a huge fan of David Littleproud, but he here is doing exactly what the party... Look, I'm going to tell you, there is no doubt in my mind the Nats planned this days ago. So when they decided to go against the Liberal Party and not vote for this legislation, they knew that the 3 Nats, the shadow cabinet, would have to hand in their resignations. They knew that because that is protocol. Now we know David Littleproud said today that he sent a 4th letter to Susan Lee saying that if you accept these resignations, excuse me, if you accept these resignations, we will all walk away. Susan Lee has called his bluff, but he has followed through. But that says to me, this was planned by the Nats to decouple from the Liberal Party. Now, the leaking continues because news.com.au today is reporting that during a phone call between David Littleproud and Susan Lee, that he was irate and unhinged. Now, this is according to Liberal MPs with knowledge of the clash. And at various points, he was shouting. So this has got a long way to go. The Nats have now made an enemy out of the Libs. And the Libs have basically don't care about the Nats. The Nats don't care about the Libs. And it's a real divorce. The big winner, I've said this before, is One Nation. They, in the last news poll, they were ahead of the coalition. How many people are going to jump over to One Nation? Will they go from the Nats or the Liberal Party? Now, I think last night I said that we could see a coalition between the National Party and One Nation. But could we actually see a coalition between the Liberal Party and One Nation? The big winner there are 2 big winners out of all of this. Pauline Hanson and Anthony Albanese, because as much as far right-wing media can go on about him doing a bad job, and there are a lot of issues, what does he care? He's won the next election. It would be near impossible unless such an exciting figure like Rob McKnight came out and led one of the parties. No one's going to excite. This isn't a Kevin 07 moment. This isn't a moment where someone energises the electorate so much they just storm through. I can't see anyone that is going to do that for the Liberal Party. So Anthony Albanese is coasting. He will coast through the next election. And the Liberal Party and the Nats only have themselves to blame. Susan Lee has to go. I've been saying it for a while. It just comes down to when they're actually going to do it.
Here comes McKnight tonight.
All right, let me know your thoughts at youtube.com/@McKnight tonight. Love the feedback coming through. Want to get to it very shortly. It's a untenable situation with Susan Lee in there, but of course her job will stay if no one contests. So is someone actually going to stand up and contest? I think we'll find out next week. All right, moving on. ABC TV star Tony Armstrong has come under fire for a special that aired last night called Always Was Tonight. The special, which has been labelled divisive, took a satirical look at Indigenous issues with a key focus on Australia Day. Now, look, I watched the special today, and while I thought it was very well produced, I did think to myself, and I did wonder why the show was punching white people throughout, when I would have thought the better idea would be to bring us along for the ride. Now, there were good jokes, to be sure, like this one at the start of the show.
It's an honour to be the first blackface fronting a comedy show on the ABC since Chris Lilly.
I actually liked that joke. Didn't get a huge response from the audience, but I liked it. Look, the writing on this was great, although Armstrong, I think, struggled delivering comedy. He is a great presenter, which really showed at the end when he gave a serious message about Indigenous youth incarceration. And he is likeable. But he just seemed to be lacking that comedic edge. Luckily for him, the show was very well produced, and it smoothed over those minor issues with his performance. But I came away wondering who this was made for. Was it made for an Indigenous audience who don't need a lesson on racism in this country? Because, to be honest, the show did itself no favours when it declared whites as racist if they supported Australia Day. I'm sorry, I'm white. I support Australia Day. I want to celebrate our nation. And judging by this special, I'm racist. Skits like this one, though, did cut through without belittling modern white audiences.
People say you shouldn't get too political around January 26. It might ruin the barbecue. Well, I'd never want to ruin a barbecue, so here's some tips to get yours sizzling. The secret is seasoning. This spice mix has a hint of lemon myrtle in it. Flip the meat so that it's coated on both sides, just as some historians believe the gifts distributed by soldiers given to Aboriginal people at Manly Cove were coated in smallpox. But don't focus on that. It might ruin the barbecue. I'm using olive oil, but you can use whatever oil you prefer, as long as the bottle doesn't remind you of the vial of live smallpox variola matter reportedly in the possession of Dr. John White, surgeon with the First Fleet. Because that could ruin the barbecue.
Now, I found that very informative. I didn't know that. Probably says much about me and not understanding Australian history, which is being fixed now. Young kids coming up probably do know that. Wasn't taught in my day, or I certainly didn't learn it. There was nothing wrong with a skit like that. But what it comes down to is that this idea that we can't ruin the barbecue because we're more concerned with the barbecue than the injustice against Indigenous Australians. But two things can be true. The atrocities that Indigenous Australians went through under colonialism is terrible. No one's disputing that. And you know what? I don't mind a debate on the day we celebrate Australia and Australia Day. But this special came across like we are outrageous, we are racist if we think it's worth celebrating Australia and Australia Day. I'm sorry, but I am one of the people who want to celebrate our nation. I want our cultures to come together. But this show played on racial stereotypes, the exact thing whites are accused of when it comes to Indigenous Australians. You know, there was a show on SBS called Big Mob Brekkie, and it celebrated Indigenous culture. It was sort of like a breakfast sunrise, an Indigenous version of Sunrise. I really liked it. It was on SBS. It did a much better job of integration. This was 30 minutes of white Australia, you're fucked. That's pretty much what it said to me. It really just said, you are the problem. Maybe I am the problem. But you know what? Atrocities have happened, and yes, we need to make up for them. But we also are where we are. You know, we need to integrate as a society. I'm sick of being told that I shouldn't celebrate being an Australian. Now, that doesn't mean I'm celebrating being a white Australian. I love this country. There are problems. Absolutely. Is there racism? Yes, there is. But I also think shows like this with the best intention don't do the best job of bringing people like me along for the ride. But it wasn't all a loss. There were genuine laughs and a very powerful editorial by Armstrong at the end.
I'm sure you're expecting me to use this moment to do a big viral speech about what January 26th means and why you, the good white people watching, ought to feel real sad. But the problem is, you already know. You've heard it before, you know it's wrong. Don't be a dog. Instead, let's talk about something important. In almost all of this country, the age of criminal responsibility is just 10 years old. This is a crackdown on black kids who are 21 times more likely to be in prison than other kids. On an average night like tonight in Australia, 35 Indigenous kids under 13 years old will be incarcerated. Our government thinks these kids are too young and vulnerable to use a TikTok account, but we're comfortable shoving them in prison. I'd tell you more, but that might ruin the barbecue.
Powerful. And they then did a song about incarceration of Indigenous Australians. And look, I have been supportive of adult time for adult crime, as we call it here in Queensland. But there is a point to be made about incarceration of Indigenous kids who are more likely to find themselves in a jail cell. But did I hear him correctly? Am I a dog for celebrating Australia Day? How does that work? Why is the ABC telling me I am a dog for celebrating a national public holiday? A day that we are meant to celebrate this country. We can acknowledge the bad as well as the good, as well as celebrate the good. That kind of language does nothing, absolutely nothing to support it. Will it come back next year? I don't know. It did 261,000 nationally. To give you some context, that was a primetime show at night, but the Sunrise and Today show beat it in the morning. So it didn't rate that well. I think, as I come back to it, the producing of this special was fantastic. There were some great messages in there. But I don't think they really knew who they were making it for. Are you speaking to the echo chamber, or do you really want change? Do you really want Middle Australia, White Australia, to come along for the ride? Well, you're not going to get that by telling us we're all assholes or dogs. That is the big problem with this show. It came from an air of arrogance. And this is people on the left, the hard left, wokeism, whatever you want to call it. This is the thing they don't get. They think they're right and they can beat us down with words. You get more flies with honey. Bring us along. Don't make us feel bad about living and being alive. White privilege or whatever you want to call it. If you want to have us on this journey, don't treat us like shitheads. Don't treat us like we're the enemy, because otherwise we will remain the enemy. It's that kind of talk that has led to this whole MAGA thing in the States. You know, white people over there are being told they're wrong, they're the problem. And ultimately they're fighting back. People don't want to be told they're the problem. They want to be part of a solution. But when you treat them like the enemy, you're only going to create an enemy.
McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. McKnight tonight. Here comes McKnight tonight.
Well, I'm sure you'll let me know your feedback. I can see plenty of it coming through. Keep your feedback coming to youtube.com/@McKnight You know, I have this wonderful band that Jasmine gave me. And Jasmine, it's getting to the point where I lost the first one, so she got me another one. And it keeps coming off. I'm sorry, darling. Yeah, it might not last too much longer. But what she did, she got my 3 kids' names on it. So it's a nice little band. Anyway, guess what? I don't have a rant tonight.
Oh.
Everyone's just gone silent. I don't. I was even saying to Amanda, what should I rant about? I've got nothing. Am I sick? Get me to a hospital. So maybe send me an idea for a rant and I'll do it at the end of the show. But I don't have a rant. Nothing's pissed me off.
Really?
I know. Actually, I do have a rant. Jasmine McKnight had a go at me because I haven't talked to her today. I had a cup of tea with her this morning. We sat on the couch. We had a chat. She forgot all about it. And I've been in here because that first story was... Oh, I've been given the wind-up. Anyway, Jasmine, I love you. I appreciate you. And I'll have a chat with you over a tea in the morning. All right, let's have a random live shot of the day.
It's the random live shot of the day. Where are you going today? You'll never know where you'll end up with the random live shot of the day.
Tonight's random live shot comes to us from Sydney Harbour, and in just a short time, the Sydney Opera House may have been doing it already, will be illuminated as part of today's National Day of Mourning. Landmarks around the country are paying tribute to the victims of the Bondi tragedy in special light shows. Now, a special event has been taking place inside the Opera House. It may have just finished, I think. It was dedicated to the 15 people who lost their lives on that tragic day. Sydney is heading for was a mostly cloudy day, 19 to 23 degrees, and we ended up with a double, with the degree to double degrees there. 23 degrees. Well, that's what happens when you've got one person essentially putting the show together. All right, let's get to some feedback coming through to McKnight tonight. And we'll start off with this one from Jeanette. Good evening, everyone. Tipsy Thursday. I'm having a red wine tonight. Oh, Jeanette, right there with you. Right there with you. Radio Notes podcast says, evening, Jeanette. Charge my McKnight tonight mug with coffee. Well, no off theme. Well, I can tell you, Radio Notes podcast, it's not always water in here. Own You're Crazy says, tomorrow is my birthday. Happy birthday, Jason. I really hope you have a great one. You are part of the McKnight Tonight community, and we love you, and we love you being part of this community. I hope you have a great day. Jeanette says, what type of wine do you have, Rob and Amanda? Well, I don't think there's any problem showing it, but I've got it down here. I got it from BWS, and it's a double barrel. It's that one, and I got it on special at BWS. I really like this one, and they usually have deals. Can we get a sponsorship deal? Can I get money from BWS for that, or free wine? Anything will do. All right, let's turn to the seriousness of what's happening with the coalition or Day of Mourning here. Scouse_Raw says, what a terrible tragedy. The hundreds of women who have been killed in DV incidents, that is. Why is there a massively outsized community and government reaction to one isolated shooting incident? Well, I'll tell you why that happens. Because we obviously have a major problem with domestic violence in this country. So many women die each week from domestic violence. But what happens in an event like this is it's visceral. It's something we see. And that's why it shapes a community. More people can die because of domestic violence in a month than people did on this day, but it is shocking when people go on an attack. You can't invalidate what happened at Bondi. Yes, we should still be worried about what's happening on the domestic violence front, but that doesn't mean we can't pay tribute to the people who lost their lives on that day, who were just, let's remember, just celebrating their faith at Bondi. They weren't doing anything wrong. Again, the victims of domestic violence aren't doing anything wrong. But two things can be true. We can actually worry about both. All right, Gareth said, back in 1996, I would never have thought or guessed Pauline Hanson's One Nation would be the only stable right-wing party in Australia 30 years later. Well, you better believe it, Gareth, because it's happening. Very, very happening. Ginger Meggs says, this is just embarrassing for the LNP. It really is, and things need to change. I agree with you completely. Own Your Crazy says, the hate speech legislation was a knee-jerk reaction fueled by public expectation, not by need. It truly needed more time and consensus to truly work. You are absolutely right, but here's the problem. Susan Lee demanded that Parliament be recalled back at Christmas to deal with this. Now, they even had more time, and they were still doing the legislation the night before it went to Parliament. And the biggest issue here is Susan Lee pushed for it. It is now backfired because she didn't hold a cabinet meeting or a shadow cabinet meeting with the Nats as well as the Liberal Party. So she's excluded them. She's just got bad judgment on every front. She's got to go. Matt says, I'm thinking of being a One Nation candidate. Well, there's another McKnight Tonight viewer who was a One Nation candidate, and he's still very heavily involved in One Nation. And yeah, people are doing that, and it's a party giving real people a go. And that is something I like about it, because when you think about it, the Liberals and the Labor, they're really all, you know, it's hard to penetrate that the system. With One Nation, everybody can get a go. Gareth says, Rob for PM. Oh, Gareth, you'll be right with McKnight. Beck says, actually, Rob, you would be a good Prime Minister. Well, don't know that you needed the actually, but thank you, Beck. Tim says, what happens to the LNP in Queensland? Need a real divorce agreement to sort that one out. Vote 1, Rob McKnight for the McKnight Party. Yeah, you'll be right with McKnight Party. That would be a good one. Matt again says that special, this is the Tony Armstrong, is an utter disgrace by the ABC. Yeah, I saw what it was trying to do, but I don't think it achieved it, and I just think it was a huge mistake, Matt. I agree with you. Onion Crazy says, I turned the TV off before Armstrong's show started. So did most of Australians, because they only did, what did I say, 261,000? Over the page we go, and we've got this one from Beck. Just for the record, Rob, there are certain words that the Indigenous community are allowed to use, and we are a dog for celebrating Australia Day. I mean, I am technically celebrating it this year. Well, I don't know if dog has different meaning in Indigenous culture, but it basically says we're bad people for to me. When he calls us a dog for celebrating Australia Day, he is really having a go, and I don't like it. Tim says the day needs to change. This is Australia Day because of why it was chosen to be that day it was chosen to be. But celebrating what makes Australia great is a good thing. But I wonder, Tim, if we changed the date, would that solve the issue? And I'm not sure that it will. Will there still be protests? Will there still be this ongoing issue because we're not allowed to celebrate Australia? But On Your Own Crazy says May 8, mate. Look, I do think that's a great alternative. Problem is it's too late in the year and we don't get the sun. Let's be honest, a lot of people like where Australia Day is because it's another day at the beach. But May 8th for mate is a good idea. All right, plenty ahead in this edition of McKnight Tonight. I can still see a lot more of feedback coming through. We'll get to that shortly. And I'll even fit in a back-end quickie sent in by one of you, one of the McKnight Tonight community.
McKnight Tonight. McKnight Tonight. McKnight Tonight. Here comes McKnight Tonight.
Well, there are some major developments overnight as President Trump delivered his highly anticipated address at the World Economic Forum. Tensions have been high in Europe over America's insistence that it should be given Greenland. All of this is happening as President Trump celebrates the first anniversary of his second term. US expert Bruce Wolpe has penned a fascinating piece about Trump's presidency for The Conversation, and he's also the author of 2 books on Trump and Australia. Bruce, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
Great to be with you, a debut appearance, and delighted to be here.
Well, let's hope it's the first of many more because Trump is certainly staying in the headlines.
There's no shortage of material with Trump, and on any news cycle, it's like half a dozen red-hot issues that are worthy of attention.
I know, I really do know. Look, let's turn our attention to overnight events where Trump addressed the World Economic Forum. I'll get to Greenland specifically in a moment, but what did you think of his speech? What makes it a classic Trump speech? What are the elements? You know, tell us what you thought of the whole thing.
Well, he speaks for 90 minutes or more. He did it the day before in going to the White House press room and talking to the hundreds of journalists packed in there to outline his achievements. And so it is a rambling speech. There's no script per se. He calls it the weave. He just throws out things and tries to weave them together in a narrative. And it's some of it is electrifying, some of it is immensely boring. But what he loves is attention to him. He wants to command the airwaves and have people pay just the closest attention to what he is saying and doing, because he wants to dominate the conversation and the outcomes. So that's what. So he did that again earlier today at the Davos Forum in Switzerland.
What was interesting about that speech is that it was very centered on American politics. He's at an international forum, and yet he's taking potshots at Joe Biden. He's factually incorrect on some of the things he's saying. It seemed more of a State of the Union address rather than something where you're talking to economic and world leaders at an international forum.
But he's so self-centered that he believes anything of interest to the United States is going to have the world wrapped at what he's saying in an overseas setting. But he really did, though, broaden it, if you will, and he did have an intent to. That speech first was going to be about housing policy in America and what he's going to do about affordability and stuff like that. But the events of the past 3 days have just overtaken it, and he knew he had to address it. And so there were direct messages to Europe about what he wants, how he wants to get it. He took some things off the table, put other things on the table. I guess the imminent risk of hostile military force of one NATO member, the United States, against another, Denmark, that is now off the table. And there's now a framework to kind of discuss the issues. But believe me, Europe feels that the relationship has ruptured, and Trump is doing nothing to dissuade them from that belief. The world has changed over the past few days, and it is visible to all of us that we're in a new era, and it is very, very unstable.
It's interesting you say that, because I have thought the same. I said it on this show last night. We were discussing it, and it seems to me I've never seen a scenario where world leaders are literally doing a takedown of him, from Mark Carney in Canada, Emmanuel Macron. But obviously this has all come with his desire, his obsession with Greenland. That was the big focus of this event, what people wanted to hear from him. Let's have a listen to Trump, where he actually toned down his threats over Greenland.
It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago, after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now.
Okay, just a quick fact check there. The US never legally possessed Greenland as its own territory, so there was nothing to give back. But Bruce, his language is much softer than the threats we've recently been hearing. Is this another case of Taco Trump? Trump always chickens out?
He chickens out, particularly when the markets go south on him. And we had it in April on the trade war with China. We said, I'm going to raise your tariffs to 100% because of what you're doing. And the bond market went way south past Antarctica, and he reversed it. And the same thing happened in the markets yesterday, down almost 2%, and signaling a long-term decline. And so by taking the tariffs off the issue, by saying, I'm not going to go to war, he was able to stabilize. It's just very important to him that the stock market stays up all the time. So that was a tactical ploy. But the fact is, you're facing a president who is going against the grain of the institutions established after World War II for prosperity, security, peace. And the leaders of Europe now understand that that world is over. You had the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, just say there's been a rupture in the relationship. Chancellor Merz has said the same. Starmer of the UK, who has been, look at the hospitality he showed to the president when he went to the UK on the state visit. Even he said, you can't do this. We had a year, Trump's been in office for a year, it was now a 6th year, but a year of the second term. And over that time, knowing that Trump could upend things, the leaders individually came to a conclusion, well, let's flatter him. Let's shower him in gifts. Let's give him stature and rapture and everything like that. And they bring golden ornaments to the White House that he can put in there, and they praise him as just being the most dynamic. The head of NATO said, "We now have Daddy. He's our daddy in NATO."
That's right.
I'm sorry. Well, he's turned out to be a bad daddy in NATO, but that didn't work because Trump did not adjust his thinking, his objectives, how he wants to get it. Until he just hasn't. And now that's now digested, and people know we're in for a very rough period.
Well, on Greenland, Trump has announced he's reached the framework of a deal with NATO over Greenland's future. We don't know the details yet. I saw an interview with him said we've got concepts of a deal. It's
Yes.
almost like concepts of a plan when it comes to healthcare. But this is a theory. I want you to hear this. This is a theory I floated last night on McKnight Tonight about Trump's ultimate objectives, which I think have changed. I think he definitely wanted Greenland, but I think he's pivoted based on the backlash. Have a listen to what I said last night.
Okay.
Trump wants the minerals. That's what this is all about, right? So what if he ends up coming away from this week with a deal for a bigger American presence, which they would have got anyway, so capitulating to that isn't a problem. But what if he also got a mineral sharing deal as part of leaving Greenland alone? That's what he wants, isn't it?
It is what he wants, and that's what he wants in Venezuela, and he gets the oil. And that's what he wants from as far as Cuba, and that's what he wants in Greenland. So throughout the Americas, he sees natural resources as assets, and that they build a stronger country, and he's obsessed with it. And so I think you're exactly right. If it's not going to be done by hostile force, and I just hope so much that just never happens. Yeah, he'll strike agreements with Denmark to have leases on resources and be able to look at Zelensky and Ukraine as part of those discussions to trying to get to an end of the war. In February, when that meeting blew up in the White House, Trump had a piece of paper saying, "You give me control over your rare earths and critical minerals." And so he is absolutely taken with this and sees it as essential to the success of the United States and essential to his legacy as president.
Which he may be right. It's just the idea of demanding it from other countries. But the New York Times is reporting alliance officials separately discussed the possibility of the United States obtaining sovereignty over land for military bases, according to 3 senior officials familiar with the talks. Sovereignty is quite interesting because if he gets that over the bases and a mineral deal, he does get everything he wants. He doesn't need to own Greenland as an asset because he's getting what he wants.
You know, you're such a rational person, and it's sort of a shame that Trump doesn't listen to rational arguments. With the best of intentions, I don't think he's going to fulfill everything that you're articulating. But there is a question between war and peace, and there is a question of having some security for the United States and Europe in Greenland, and with an eye towards Russia and what it's doing, and the eye towards China and what it's doing. So that's important. But how it's done, I still think, is really up in the air. But the point is that the leaders of Europe, in their hearts, are fearful of the future, and until this week, they were hopeful about the future and felt they could do it. And let's look at Russia for just a moment. Putin is in a terrific position of leverage here. By Trump going after Venezuela for oil, Trump interested in Greenland for resources. Well, why should Putin give up any of the land he's holding in Ukraine? Correct. And you want to be the head of the Americas, and that's your sphere of influence? Well, guess what? Europe is my sphere of influence. So I think Trump has lost
no moral high ground, right?
No moral high ground, but no leverage in order to get a peace deal with an end to that war in Ukraine. So I think that is as far away as it has ever been, and that means that he's failed in that. He has these deals, these mega deals that he puts together. So this is one on Greenland. He has one on Gaza. He's trying to do something on Ukraine, and he says, "I have a framework, and we're going to." But he never closes the deal. It's never over. It's never solved, and I think that is a massive failure in his presidency.
Well, let's talk his presidency generally, because it's been a big year for Donald Trump. We've just passed the first anniversary of his second term. Give me your report card.
The report card is that he's past peak power, and things that he's done is catching up with him. He is his
So
approval
by that, do
rating.
you mean he's a good one-term president, but 2 terms now that he's got his second term and he's done a year, all the stuff that he's done previously and in the last year will catch up with him?
It's catching up with him. The effectiveness of his exercise of power is post peak. In other words, it's in decline. His polls have gone down from 50% approval to 40% approval. The only issues in which he's above 50% of popularity is controlling crime, and then sealing the border with Mexico. People like that. In Australia, we have immigration policy. People don't want people pouring into the country. It works politically. But on everything else, and especially the economy, do the American people feel more secure about their economic future? The answer is no. Do they like agents of the ICE agents, the immigration agents, flooding American cities and making pretty brutal arrests on people? The answer is no. Are they happy with how he's dealing with taxes, with foreign policy, with what he did in Venezuela? The answer is no. So he is not in as commanding a position as he was in the first months of his presidency. And later this year, we have elections for the House and the Senate, the midterm elections in November. The margins in the House are very close, 2 or 3 seats either way for a majority. In the Senate, 3, 4 seats. And the outlook right now, just based on where Trump is and how he's not connecting with most Americans these days, that the prospects for Democrats in those elections are good. But, that's still 7 months away, and that's a long time in American politics.
Is he still popular with the MAGA base?
He is popular with the MAGA base, but this fixation on foreign policy, on Gaza, on Venezuela, on Greenland.
People say they voted for Trump and for him to cut through it all, but they didn't vote to invade Greenland and Venezuela and all this kind of stuff.
You said you'd take care of us. You're going to make America great again at home. But every day that he spends on foreign policy is a day he's not improving the economy. And since it's cost of living affordability issues, just like in Australia, things cost too much. I just don't feel I have the resources I need to take care of myself and my family. Job security is not very high. And so you're not delivering to me. And I still think the economic issues are the strongest driver of whether he's going to be politically successful.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because you can tell people they've never had it so good, but if they're struggling financially and struggling to do the shopping, the reality hits home.
He says we're the hottest country in the world. Well, hot for who? And it's not a majority of the American people. And honestly, he won. Without COVID, I think he would have been reelected in 2020. And I think he won the election in 2024 because people were not happy with inflation and high interest rates.
Yeah.
So it's still the most important factor to keep your eye on. On polling, just for our viewers, when Trump goes below 40%, that's pretty serious stuff, because 40% is his base. So if he goes below that, that means that his base is beginning to defect from him.
And what, he's about 37, I think I saw one poll
30,
at the moment?
about 38. Now it can, if great things happen, it can go up, but if bad things happen, it can keep going down. He's not, he says, I'm the most popular president. He's not. So he's struggled. He's going to go on the campaign trail starting next week. He intends to be very active going into states and congressional seats that are crucial to keeping the Republican majority in the House. So he'll be out there. And so we're going to have a lot more 90-minute speeches from this president.
I think he actually prefers running for president and campaigning rather than being president. But on that, Steve Bannon is openly saying Trump will run for another term. Do you think Americans, even his biggest supporters, will cop that?
I don't think anyone will. Well, I think his supporters may want that, but it's impossible. He cannot do it. It is against the Constitution. He doesn't control the elections. There are the ballots for president and Congress are determined by each state. There are 50 state ballots for the election, and he doesn't control it. He can't. He is ineligible under the Constitution to run, and he knows it. But I think he loves talk about it, and so I sorry. I have a few constitutional scholars I'd like you to meet, okay? It can't happen.
Yeah, but in Trump's America, I just fear anything can happen. Hey, look, Bruce, I appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for joining us on McKnight Tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
McKnight Tonight. McKnight Tonight. McKnight Tonight. Here comes McKnight Tonight.
Ah, yes. You know what? Oh, I hit the music too soon. I was thinking, I threw myself, Amanda. I went, why have I hit the music? Anyway, let's do this.
It's time for a Backend Quickie.
How much have I had tonight? I forgot about the Backend Quickie intros and just started rolling the music. But I do need to roll the music. Tonight's Backend Quickie has come from Jason Ferguson, and I have to put the McKnight Tonight music to it because I reckon we'll get a copyright strike for the music use if I use the original music. But he found a commercial that is quite hilarious. Let's roll the tape. I don't know why that appeals to me so much. Let's take a look at the feedback coming through to McKnight Tonight. We got, regarding me not having a rant tonight, Own You're Crazy says, nothing pissed Rob off. You can't have been trying harder. Oh, no. I don't try to get pissed off for my rants. It just happens organically. But you know what? For the past 2 days, the stories have been so big, and you might have noticed they were very long first topics. I've pretty much been in here for the past 2 days, going through and watching everything that's going on. It's been pretty full on. Radio Notes podcast says, is that Jacobs Creek? Why, yes, it was. Almost, well, we're down to halfway. We can get through that tonight, Amanda, I think. Beck says, my parents' favourite wine is Jacobs Creek. Oh, fabulous. Well, we're all on the Jacobs Creek barrel. Dylan says, why is Australia Day still an issue? The overwhelming majority of Australians want it to stay where it is. It's our national day and we should be proud to celebrate the country we are today. I agree with that. Look, the day itself, the date is a date of significance and we have a right to protest. I just guess I don't like it when the ABC is telling me I'm a dog for celebrating Australia Day. Scouse_raw is the only national day that exists that celebrates genocide and colonisation. There is 364 other days of the year to choose from, and why not any other day? So I'm taking that to mean that if the date, it is all about the date, not the celebration of who we are. And you know what? I do have some sympathy for that. I really do. So I'm open to it. And I accepted that the date was going to move. There was this big push, but that seems to have backed off. And I don't like local councils deciding whether we can or can't celebrate Australia Day. Travis says if the date changes, they will just move on to the next complaint. And that's my concern as well, Travis, that it's not specifically about the date. But we'll see, because I do think it'll happen eventually. So Dave Roberts says, I told you there would not be a positive report card. I watched the entire speech and Bruce Wolpe is a left-wing hack. Well, I actually like Bruce Wolpe, but I also watched the entire speech and I did think it was bizarre that Trump was talking about domestic policies in front of the world stage and attacking Biden. And I think there was a lot of positive Trump could do because he can cut through the BS. But I think he's gotten a bit used to the power. And especially, there's something that's turned on him because he saw how they went into Venezuela. And he indicated in that speech that we basically, it sounded to me like he was saying America has weapons that stops the other side from firing their weapons. It sounded like he was saying the Venezuelans, they had some kind of disruptor that stopped their weapons. So that's emboldening him, but he certainly has felt the force of Europe pushing back against him. Own You're Crazy. It's up to the people of Greenland to determine their own destiny, and that is absolutely true. Thank you for your feedback. Beck says, this guy is right about the Ukraine thing. There he goes. Good positive feedback for Bruce. Matthew says, I guess it's really up to Denmark. Yes, it absolutely is. Own Your Crazy says, Trump has been inviting world leaders to join his privatised United Nations for the dirt cheap price of $1 billion. He plans to rebuild things he doesn't own. There's a lot of truth to that. And in fact, Australia has been invited. Now, my understanding is that you can join if you're invited, like Australia could join, but if you want to be permanent, you have to pay the $1 billion, which essentially goes to Donald Trump. So, yeah, I think it's a farce and we should have nothing to do with it. Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of McKnight Tonight. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/McKnight Tonight. No one's bought me a coffee lately. I need one to go in here. Now, don't forget, we are not here doing a McKnight Tonight stream on Monday. But if you are subscribed to YouTube, we can have a chat. You can ask me questions. We're going to do a Zoom call with paid members of the YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/@McKnight And I swear to God, Jasmine, it's not distracting at all that you're just standing in my eye line dancing like that. Do you want to come and show them what you were doing? I literally looked there and my daughter is going... She's gone bright red. I was going to ignore it, but it was literally right behind the camera. All right, that brings us to the end of McKnight Tonight. We'll see you Tuesday night for Media McKnight. McKnight Tonight's back on Wednesday, but I'll see paid members on Monday at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern
Insightful interviews from a washed-up producer with nothing to lose. McKnight Tonight. McKnight Tonight. It's good night from McKnight.